Your logo is not your personal brand. What do I mean by this? And what else is there in a brand other than your logo? Welcome to Video Confidence Coach Cast with your host, me, Zoe, the Video Confidence Coach. We are going to discuss a question that I do get a lot in the personal branding space that I'm in. For people who are not necessarily new to business and branding, but for people who are new to the personal branding space. They may have run a business or been in careers for a very long time where they have been, I don't want to say shadowed, but for example, maybe you've worked in corporate for a very long time and you've always been behind a logo. Like you and everyone else in your company has always just been behind a usually dull, no offense, logo. And that has been the face of your brand. Maybe some colors, maybe some flares, but that's essentially it. And moving to a personal brand, especially your own personal brand, it can feel comfortable to rely on a logo to be able to represent your brand entirely. And I'm going to caution you against that, not necessarily as a be-all and end-all, but I'm just saying when it comes to representing your brand, standing behind a faceless logo can do more detriment than good for your personal brand. So what I mean by that. So when it comes to your personal brand, there is more than just a logo. There is your face, your colors, the words that you use to describe yourself and your brand, and the words that you use to describe your customers. The colors that you use, the additional images that are not just you and your face, but the images of your customers, of your products, of your services, the air and feel or the graphic design that supports your brand. Those are just some of the things that your branding is wholly inclusive of rather than just your logo. And also, your logo can also just be something that you've hired a graphic designer to put together, usually with very minimal direction, because of course you're starting this out for yourself and you're not entirely sure what you need to do. All you know that is just like, hi, I like these colors and this is the target market that I'm working with. And that's usually it. And that is okay. Having a logo to start with, it's great. It gives you something to start off with, so then you can work your way up. Because you may not have any experience with graphic design, with branding yourself, or with choosing what options to go with when it comes to, for example, creating a social media post. Do I go with the square, the triangle, the circle? Like, it can become quite overwhelming if you don't have a direction in mind. But when it comes to your logo, where exactly do you see the logo? So in recommendations, now of course I come from experience with working with corporates and working with corporations where logos are kind of necessary in the sense that I need to have it on like any documentation that I give them. I need to have that in any like booklets or any work pages, sometimes on my website, on corporate pages of my website, where most of my branding is fairly light and fairly carefree, usually has my face in it somewhere, just so you know that you're talking to the Video Confidence Coach, and a lot of bright colors. When it comes to corporates, most of the time they just need the information up front, and I'm like, that is fine. Here is my logo. Here's the information that you need. Boom, 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 done. When I'm working with corporates, I try and streamline that process for them. For other people who maybe are coming to learn about their own personal brand or what options they have, say for example, when it comes to mentoring or coaching for their business or podcasting or live streaming or other things that I do with clients, I like to be able to ease them into the process while also giving them the opportunity to take what information that is best beneficial to them as they go along reading through or watching the videos or podcasts that we create here. So when it comes to your brand, it's not just a logo. Everything that I've described so far, you can visually see that in your mind, or if you're the type of people that aren't able to see that visually in your mind, you can kind of get the idea though that a brand is not just a logo. You can base your personal brand around a logo, but that's not necessarily going to make it easier to connect with the type of audience that you want to bring on board. Because if everything is behind that logo, yes, after a while of communicating with people and reaching out to people, they might be able to see your logo and go, oh, I know who that is. I can put a face to the name. Would it be easier just to show your face and provide your face? Now, of course, when working with a couple of clients that I work with who are faceless in their branding, that is okay. Like, I want to stress, you don't have to put your face out there. And of course, with the rising security issues and threats, I totally get it. You do not need to show your face when it comes to personal branding. Everything else can support it, including your logo, but not just your logo. So say, for example, I'm working with a client at the moment who loves to yap, very much like myself, very much likes to talk, but is not a fan of putting their face out online. So we're looking into virtual avatar options. So they actually have some sort of visual representation of their brand when they're communicating via podcasting or video or live streams. And they can also use that as an opportunity to then base the visual part of their brand on that light, fun, go happy lucky, as we like to call it, side of their brand, because that can work cohesively to say, for example, they like to use a lot of bright colors. They're very much, the work that they do is bringing out the inner child within mothers or people who have been catering to their own child's sense of wonder and whimsy as opposed to their own, and they're feeling a bit burnt out. As you could probably imagine, having that color and liveliness, but also with that adult twang of, being able to swear, is something that gives people the giddiness and the feeling, and also gives them a chance to then mentor or coach those people with that in mind. Because looking at their website, looking at the videos, looking at the fun that they have together, they can see, like, I want to be a part of that. And even though she may be not showing her face, you can still hear her voice. You can still regularly consume her podcasts. You can see the virtual avatar that she's having a lot of fun with, even though it keeps breaking, and we're currently working on that at the moment. But again, you don't have to show your face to build your personal brand. But again, back to the topic at hand, Zoe, when it comes to logos, having a logo for, like I mentioned before, corporate situations or situations where maybe it may be not appropriate to show your face, say, for example, something like a letterhead or something like an email signature where you got to make it as small as possible to make sure that you fit within guidelines within either a corporation that you're working with or that you're working alongside. Making sure that you give yourself that opportunity of different options. For example, with my branding, I have my logo, the Video Confidence Coach logo, with a play button in the middle of the logo. And for example, I get a lot of people who see my logo for the first time and go, oh, I didn't know you had a logo, Zoe. I'm like, yeah. And that's okay, because my logo is clear enough for you to be able to say, oh, what's it for? Video Confidence Coach. Ah, I know who that is. So that ease of recognition is fairly easy. People are able to see the play button, and slowly over time they're able to recognize that play button is, oh, that's Zoe. That's Zoe's play button. You can see that branding is working together. Again, with the everything else around it, the colors, the use of language, the use of facial expressions, the use of effects that are either on the visuals or on any of the graphic design elements, maybe some certain shapes or flares, or maybe some particular animations. Again, everything can work cohesively to create a brand. And if you are unfamiliar with that, I would recommend looking at some of your competition, collaborators, as I like to say, or some people who are in parallel fields to you. So what I mean by this, for example, you may be a makeup artist, but you, for example, wouldn't exactly be a fashion designer, but the type of clients who come to you think of you in the same sort of field. So look at the work that they're doing. See how every post that they put together has the same fonts, has the same colors, has the same image uses. Even though they're different images, they're definitely part of a whole theme. And ultimately, these decisions make it easier to make decisions when it comes to branding, graphic design, or anything like that. For example, I have a business associate of mine who was recently doing some photos, and we were chatting a little bit about how, all right, what positions do I use? How do where do I put my hands when trying to take these professional photos that she is going to use across a whole plethora of things to do with her own personal brand and the brands that she works with. So I said, okay, again, thinking of the customer in mind, what do the customer needs? The customer wants to be able to see your face cleanly, possibly see a smile to know that they're welcoming and you are welcoming them into the work that you're doing, and to have both a fun, possibly have photos of you laughing, as well as photos of you like showcasing presentations and other things like that, as well as being able to sit there calmly and not corporate-y, but like with a straight back and presenting and leaning forward a little bit. Again, these type of photos are being used across all of their branding, website, emails, social media. Everything is going to be used for at least the next 2 years, arguably. So they want to make sure that they've got all of the options covered for their needs. And eventually, when they go through and go through those images, they might find that like, hey, the part where I'm sitting there at a desk leaning forward doesn't really look like me, Zoe. It doesn't really feel like me. Then don't use it. That's okay. Photographers are there to work with you. They have the audience in mind. They have the idea of who you're working with in mind. So they're going to work the photos to work with that. And of course, they're going to do their best to keep you happy as their customers. So again, when it comes to the work that you do and the branding that you have, being able to showcase this not just in your logo, and again, your logo can be quite boring, can be quite plain. Arguably, I get a lot of people saying, Zoe, your logo is quite plain. I'm like, that's fine, because it's there to do a job and it's there to be able to clearly read Video Confidence Coach, maybe with my little logo of that play button in the corner. So then I can use that in other areas of my website. Again, my face and my branding and the energy that I want to bring to my graphical elements most of the time, does the job. I do use the logo as a way of just making sure that everything is consistent. But again, I don't always use it, and that is okay, because people usually find Video Confidence Coach and where that is useful for them. But again, making sure that your customer is what's in mind. Do you work with a lot of corporates? Do you work with a lot of C-suite or a lot of no nonsense? Hey, I'm just here to get the information I need and get the hell out. So utilizing a letterhead logo, information on one A4 page, so you can either print it, email it to them, send it to them, whatever. And if that's what you need, then have a logo. Do not neglect other aspects of your personal brand. But when it comes to the first steps, getting that logo done is something that you can do relatively easily, relatively straightforwardly, and if necessary, create it in Canva for free. I don't usually recommend it, mainly because a graphic designer brings a lot of wealth and knowledge to a project. And if a logo, like I said, if you are working with corporates and people are going to see the logo a lot more before they see you, then investing in your logo makes sense. Again, it's not the be all and end all. I want to stress that. Just because you've done one thing does not mean you don't have to do everything else. But the logo is not necessarily going to represent your whole personal brand. It's just going to be the first step for you, especially when working with corporates. When working with, say, other small business owners or working with the public, then utilizing your face and utilizing, for example, a set of colors or maybe a couple of shapes, something simple and easy for you to do, then that's going to be a lot easier. I'm going to stress that now. It's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to do that, because you don't have to think about, okay, I have to think about what images I'm using, and I have to think about exactly what Photoshop files or filters I'm using. Don't overcomplicate it for yourself. Being able to have that vision in mind of, okay, this is how I want myself to come across to an audience, then use the same photo of you. Sometimes I have had people mention that they can get bored of their own photos, and that's okay. It's not for you. It's for your customer, and especially new ones that come across you. Another element that I come across with branding that a lot of people usually forget is the use of music. Music that you have access to. Now, I do recommend using royalty-free libraries. Royalty-free is essentially music that is available for you to use in a commercial capacity, so for your business or your personal brand, that will not incur a copyright strike, will not, You know, you won't put up a video that you worked really hard on and it's got 2 seconds of a Bruno Mars song and your entire video is put, or they run ads to it, like way too many ads, arguably, to the point where your video is almost unwatchable. So, of course, a lot of these people who own the rights to these songs will not let you use it willy-nilly. So, in those moments, being able to use something like, so the YouTube audio library, that is royalty-free, I highly recommend using that just because it's already pre-vetted stuff. Obviously, it's not going to be your Taylor Swift's, but it is going to get the point across. And say, for example, with the work that I've used, I have my motif of trumpets. They are loud, they are attention-grabbing, and they are fun, and I just enjoy listening to trumpet music. So I'm inherently going to use that a lot in the branding and the work that I do. I like electronic, so as you've been able to see or listen to in the podcast, in those intros and outros, you would have heard some of that music that I like to use. And I have licensed that and paid a lot of money for that license, despite what YouTube thinks. But in those opportunities, I like to use brass and the visual aspects of trumpets, as well as actually showcasing the music itself, to be able to provide another layer of my personal brand that's not, again, not just me and my voice or the way that I present myself or the makeup that I put on my face, clown makeup, as some old sad white men have commented. I like to do that. I like to have fun. I like people to be able to watch my face and go, wow, there's a lot there. Welcome to my life. So when it comes to your branding, as I mentioned, and as I wrap this podcast episode up for you, your logo should not be the end of your personal brand. It should be the one of many steps regarding your personal brand. You should use it as an opportunity you should use a logo in opportunities, for example, when maybe it's not appropriate to show your face. But I'm going to tell you now, as your business grows, you're going to be more likely to use your face if you're using your face, or you're going to use your avatar or some other visual representation of you and the work that you do over your logo. And again, your logo is still going to be there, still going to be useful, but you're going to start using it less and less. And I'm not saying that just because of my own personal experience. I've seen this a lot with other clients that I've worked with on their personal branding journeys, that they start off very much holding on to their logos for dear life, mainly because they paid a lot of money for them. But also it's that feeling of just like, this is me, Zoe, this entire thing that I've spent a lot of money on is also the thing that is representing me. And as we work to build up their personal brand, the graphical elements, everything coming together, the sound, the look and feel of their brand. And again, the way that a personal brand works is because it makes it easier for you to make decisions when it comes to putting together a template, putting together a page on your website, or putting together something else like a social media or an email. You don't have to think about, what images do I use? You've already got a library of images that you've already approved to use that have the same filter, that have the same styles and work well with your brand, so that the customers, again, customers at the end of the day are the ones that you're doing this for, know exactly who they're talking to. Because it's the same type of colors, same energy, same faces, same emotions being used throughout your brand. And of course, this all happens consistently. You have to consistently use this. Of course, like very much like myself and with customers that I work with, we like to experiment. We like to try things out. And that is okay. Just be prepared that you may not get full support from your audience, especially one that you've been growing with for a long time, because they're like, ooh, this is new, this is interesting, I'm scared. Don't worry, it's okay. We're trialing and testing things out. It's not the end of the world. So back yourself up in that respect, but it's okay to keep a consistent look and feel when it comes to the work that you do. And this use of your logo or branching out beyond your logo is also very useful in old methods of advertising as well, is my last note here. Is I worked with a client a couple of years ago who was doing a lot of billboards and a lot of really big honking billboards that are on the sides of the roads. And people were able to consistently notice that it was him, not because of the logo that was in the bottom left-hand corner despite the fact that everyone could see the logo, people were remembering his face. People were remembering the colors that he used. People were remembering, he also had like wacky facial expressions as well. That's what people remembered. And especially on billboards when you only have like, I think some sort of statistic said you only had like less than a second to be able to get people to recognize what's going on. That is very useful to build up your personal brand. He brought more people into the store because people were able to recognize his consistent personal brand, and people were able to clearly see, so say for example, one that states off the top of my head is he had a very bright, I think it was either an orange or not a yellow. That's another Australian thing you don't need to worry about. It was a very bright background. You would have him, he was dressed up in a butler suit, and he had a cloche that he had above his head, and he had a platter that had the words, had some sort of word that he was pushing at the time that people automatically saw, and people then Googled that word, and then his face showed up. Like he was one of the first like top 5 results. People clicked his face, and then immediately he got a lot more tangible people coming to his business because he could actually track that and see that. Now, of course, billboards are definitely growing up again in popularity. A lot of old forms of advertising are definitely making a comeback, and that is awesome and good to see. I'm going to say that there's a reason why it worked then. The only problem is now is that obviously we are very much overrun with advertising, because of course we are. And when it comes to your personal branding, it's not necessarily all the time. You are allowed to take your feet off the accelerator for a second. But when people find you, if they're able to see a consistency in the visuals that you use, in the sound that you use, in the words that you say, they are more likely to trust you and inherently buy from you. Because that's all that we're doing here, is to build up trust so people can buy from you. And hopefully, I thank you so much for listening to me and building trust with me, hopefully, as I've been ranting throughout this podcast episode today. If you are interested in having a chat with me or picking my brain, you can also book in those sessions with me, either mentoring or coaching at vcc.training. You can find more information on the homepage as I'm building it right now. I look forward to seeing, hopefully, you there and building your personal brand with me, so the Video Confidence Coach. Enjoy the rest of your week.